I'm drinking out of this mug of my dad's. My dad has probably had this mug since maybe the mid to late 80s. I don't know. It's one of these like novelty. I don't. It's not really a novelty mug. A novelty is kind of something that you can't really use, or you can use, but you would never use it. You could definitely use this mug. I mean, I'm using it right now to drink coffee. But it's got like a kind of a funny saying on it. It's says work is for people who don't know how to play golf. So that's what it says. I'm trying to look for a copyright on this mug. See if maybe I can identify when it was made. 19. No, I can't see it. Made in Korea. So maybe it has like a date on the bottom of it, but I can't really see it right now because it's kind of the low light in my parents' kitchen, and also the mug is full of coffee. So in order to read it, I would really have to. Maybe I could like drop it so it would like shatter at my feet, like at the end of The Usual Suspects. It would say like Kobayashi or something. I don't know, but yeah, I'm drinking coffee out of this mug, and it's got a feature on it that I recently realized that a lot of mugs have. I just have never noticed them before. Like a week ago, it's got on the handle of the mug, it's got these two holes in it. You know, one in the top part of the handle and one on the bottom. And it's to, I suppose, hold a pencil. In this case, probably like a golf pencil. It would kind of be difficult to ride around the golf course in like an electric cart, even on the path, and drink coffee out of a mug. But nevertheless, yeah, they put these holes there because I assume that they are encouraging you to like hold a golf pencil, because it's not big enough for like a regular pencil. But yeah, I have. I recently noticed on some of the mugs that I have at my own house, some pencil holders in them. There are these mugs for like the university writing center where I worked. I have like 3 mugs from there because I was the only one there who really drank coffee, and so I would take all these mugs, and then they would just say, "Take them home." Nobody drinks coffee here, so we got a bunch of them made. Nobody's taking them, so. But yeah, I've never had the need to use the pencil holder on a coffee mug before. Hence, I just like noticed it like last week. I don't know, but yeah. But I'm in my parents' kitchen right now. This is Mike Booty. This is the Midnight Citizen. It's nice to see you after a very long time of being away. It's the second day of the year now for like another 30 minutes or so. January 2nd, 2025. It's 11:30 at night, and I'm so weird. I came over here tonight to stay with my parents' house. My niece and my nephews are here. They're leaving in the morning, but they've been here all throughout Christmas break. They came over here like on Christmas Day, and they're just now about to go back because school starts back on Monday. So I wanted to come over here. I wanted to hang out with them because it'll probably be the last time I get to see them for a little while. So they live in Mississippi. Turn down the television some. So yeah, they're going back in the morning. So I just came in to hang out with my parents tonight, and to it's weird because we're getting to that point now where my niece is 17 years old, so she's got one more year of high school. So like those days are really kind of coming to a close where everybody is in my family is, going to continue to kind of have traditional holidays, I suppose. It's kind of like that with my family. Like when my sisters and I, when we started getting older and started leaving high school and going off to college, we had maybe 3 or 4 Christmases after my oldest sister, graduated high school, where we were all still together regularly on Christmas Day. And then she met a guy and she got married. And so it took several years, and then of my sisters both having kids, and then to kind of get into the groove with what we do for Christmas now in terms of getting everybody together, right? So they go and have Christmas with their in-laws, and then they come over here, and we have a big family Christmas over here. And so, yeah, now my niece is maybe we're looking at 4 or 5 more years, and then it's maybe even less, who knows? And then we're going to have to kind of do the cycle all over again, right? So, yeah, I kind of started to freak out a little bit a couple of days ago, because it's man, we're not really going to get that many more opportunities to do this kind of thing. So, I don't know. I came over here tonight, and, it's truly just one of those things where, Christmas is over. All the fanfare about it is gone. And so the presents have been opened. And, yeah, I came over tonight, and the kids were just kind of off in their own worlds. My niece was, she was on her computer. She was drawing anime and things. My 12-year-old nephew Jackson was off playing video games, and then my 10-year-old nephew Wyatt was also playing video games, but I managed to lure him to watch a movie with me and my dad. So we watched one of the Mission Impossible movies, with Tom Cruise. And it was good because last year we watched one of the newer Mission Impossible movies. And these are very action oriented and very stunt oriented. So it's something that a 9-year-old could understand, explosions and car chases and everything. I kind of made a mistake this year. I put on the original Mission Impossible, which I realized when I put it on is now 30 years old. That movie is 30 years old. Mission Impossible. It's made in, I guess almost 30. Yeah, 30 years old, 1995. Right, is when that movie was made, or was it 96? Whatever. It's somewhere around there. But this movie is a classic film to somebody my 10-year-old nephew Wyatt. And I was in 8th grade when that movie came out. So if I think about that, what was 30 years before 1996? 1966? I mean, that's a long time. That's when Bonnie and Clyde came out, right? So this is to my 10-year-old nephew Wyatt, this is I'm showing him Bonnie and Clyde, right? A movie from the 1960s, a Technicolor movie or something, in CinemaScope or something. I don't know. That's what it feels like. So yeah, I put it on for him. I kind of instantly regretted it because that first Mission Impossible movie, I've always liked that movie ever since it came out. And I was thinking about it that, the first time I ever saw that movie, I didn't see it in the theater when it came out. For some reason, I missed it. I could have gone to see it in the theater. I don't know why I never did. But, yeah, the first time I ever saw that movie was, Christmas of probably 1996, I guess. It had come out on videotape. And my sister Melissa, who is, Wyatt's mother, bought it for me for Christmas. And so I was thinking that, 30 years ago, or maybe 29 years ago, in this very house, upstairs in my room, where he's sleeping right now was when I first saw that movie. So, yeah. So yeah, we put this movie on, and I just kind of instantly regretted it because that first Mission Impossible movie, yeah, it has like some kind of like exciting stunts now, and some action sequences, but it's mainly just like talk. It's a lot of talk. That first Mission Impossible movie is so plot oriented and so complicated. It's a really complicated movie. And I forgot that like the credits came on, and I forgot that the guy who wrote it was the screenwriter Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, which is one of like the best movies ever, but it's also one of the most complicated movies ever. Like this guy Robert Towne has a knack for making things very complicated, I guess, and for, you know, telling very complex stories. That it really does take like an adult mind that enjoys puzzles and things like that to figure out. And yeah, indeed, it took me many years of watching Mission Impossible at various times and various ages to really figure that movie out. It's a very complex movie. And yeah, sure enough, like Wyatt fell asleep in the middle of it. It was not like last year when we watched like Mission Impossible Rogue Nation or whatever, which is, you know, just still kind of a complex plot, but it's like very easy to understand because of all the explosions and the car. Like every scene in that movie is like an action sequence. So, but yeah, this original Mission Impossible, not so much. Like, yeah, there's like a very, I think like the plot for Mission Impossible is kind of like there's like this thing called the knock list, which is a list of like secret agents, right, working for the IMF, which is not the International Monetary Fund. It's the Impossible Mission Force is what it's called, the IMF. So, and the knock list is, as the movie opens, right, Tom Cruise, who's Ethan Hunt, and his boss, Jim Phelps, played by John Voight. And, you know, Jim Phelps is like the character from the original Mission Impossible television show created by Bruce Geller back in the 60s, right? He's the only holdover. Ethan Hunt is not in the original Mission Impossible show. He's like an original character created for the film series. So Jim Phelps and Ethan Hunt are heading up this team of secret agents working for the IMF, and they're trying to apprehend this traitor who's going to steal the knock list from the United States and basically sell it to the highest bidder, whoever, like whatever drug lord or crime boss who wants to expose secret agents working for the United States government and kill them, right? So that they can kind of do whatever they want to do, like trade drugs and things like that. So weapons, all that. So as the movie opens, they not only lose the knock list, like the mission goes horribly wrong. They lose the knock list, and somebody kills the entire team of Impossible Mission agents, except for Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise, because he survives, is believed to be the traitor. And so Tom Cruise escapes capture and becomes a rogue agent and tries to prove his innocence by stealing the real knock list by breaking into CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. And he finds out that the man who set him up, the man who is really the crime boss who's trying to steal the knock list and all that stuff, is really Jim Phelps, right? So, you know, and I realized that, you know, for people who had grown up, like my dad, watching the original Mission Impossible show, this would have been a major twist. You know, like the good guy, you know, Peter Graves from the original Mission Impossible, Jim Phelps, is the mastermind, the bad guy, right? And as I understand, Peter Graves did not like that idea. He didn't like the idea of his legacy being tarnished by, you know, Jim Phelps being a bad guy. So anyway. But it is a very complicated movie. It's, and there is like, especially one sequence that I was noticing tonight. I had never noticed this before. A very complex sequence that I had to like explain to not only Wyatt, but my dad as well, who was watching it. My dad's a very smart guy, but he didn't know. So, late in the movie when Ethan Hunt figures out that Jim has framed him and sold him down the river, there's a scene where Ethan is sitting across from Jim and they're reuniting, and Ethan figures out that Jim is the traitor, but he can't let Jim know that he knows that he's the traitor, because Jim would just kill him. So Ethan kind of concocts this fake story of somebody else being the traitor. And so as he's telling this to Jim, it's also cutting back and forth to flashbacks of Jim, setting Ethan up. So basically the flashbacks that we see are what Jim is, or what Ethan is constructing in his mind. And meanwhile, he's telling Jim the opposite of what we see in the flashbacks, right? He's saying this guy is the traitor, but meanwhile, we're seeing the flashbacks, right? It's a very complicated piece of editing that I did not ever pick up on, never noticed, right? It's just one of those scenes that you just kind of like, glide past because you're kind of ready to, you're just kind of ready to see like the action sequences, right? The next scene that takes place on the train, which, let's face it, like years later, the action sequences, like you could really see the special effects. Like the special effects are not nearly as good as they are today, but there's still just something about it. Like that movie was just so high tech when it came out. And so today when you watch like Mission Impossible, the original movie, it's like very nostalgic to see the special effects that they used in that movie, like the green screen effects that were super advanced back then, but now look very antiquated, right? So there's just something in that movie for everybody. I don't know. I really like it a lot. Mission Impossible. So yeah, Wyatt gave it, afterwards I asked my 10-year-old nephew Wyatt, I said, what'd you think? And he said, well, I fell asleep for a little bit, but like 4.5 stars. I liked it. I said, all right, out of how many stars? And he said 4.5. I said, those are like the same thing, right? 4.5 and 4.5. And he's like, I know, 4.5. 4.5 stars, the highest rating. Even though he did fall asleep, but that's okay. I think he's like still at that age where he just, wants to just make sure that you're happy, So, So yeah, like everybody's gone to bed and I've got the whole downstairs to myself, and did what I usually do when I'm in this situation, whenever I come out here to spend the night. Normally I come out to my parents' house when I have like a lot of work to do, like for school or whatever. Like when I was finishing grad school up back in April and May, I was here practically every weekend, just because my parents would go to bed and I would have the whole downstairs just to myself to be able to write and read and research and all that. And haven't really been here that much since then because I've just been teaching, and it's been pretty easy to get all that together. It hasn't really been a lot of heavy, complex thought gone into it where I need like hours of quiet to myself. But yeah, right now tonight I've been in between watching a movie with my dad and my nephew and just visiting with everybody. I've been working on my syllabi for the upcoming semester at school, putting together some lesson plans for the classes I'm teaching and all that. Those are due tomorrow. And class does not start until a week from Tuesday. So kind of a while. It's one of the things I like teaching about college is that you get like a month off. You know, you don't really get paid during that month, but you know, you still get it off. So it's kind of nice. So I made some coffee and Irished it up a little bit with some Old Forester, the best. And I'm going to go outside, and it is a cold night. I don't know how cold. I haven't been out in a few minutes. Let's see if it got any chillier. It did. It's cold. I can see my breath. Oh dear. Make sure I didn't lock myself out. Yeah. There we go. And on the back porch now. I do have a gas heater here. And I want to video myself here as my like last will and testament because this thing is not very safe. There's like an igniter on here that broke about a year ago or so. So, you know, like nowadays, every time you light this thing, you kind of have to say a prayer beforehand. If you're a religious person, which I'm not really a religious person, but I'm still going to say a prayer just to cover my bases. And set up the camera here. So yeah, there's a little hole here in lieu of the igniter. You have to push the pilot light in and then take this long lighter, sort of stick it in this hole here, and just hope that you're okay. We got it. Lower the heat down a little bit. Yeah, we have some heat here. That's good. Okay. So, we're good. Do have a cigar here also. We're going to have. This is a Perdomo Habano. Been really liking the Habano cigars cigar gauge lately. Is that what you call it, a gauge? Yeah, it's just kind of like a long, skinny sort of style. It's good for like a kind of a, I don't know, about an hour and 10 minutes or so. Nice smoke. Definitely. Now the really cool trick, you can use the lighter to light your cigar. Yeah, so I was going to have more work to do, lesson planning wise, but alas, like tonight I got the news that one of my classes that I was supposed to teach at a community college canceled due to unenrollment, i.e. total lack of interest, I suppose. Yeah. It was really unfortunate. I was looking forward to teaching that class too. It was a literature class. As an adjunct English instructor, normally what you teach are classes in composition. You know, teaching kids how to write essays, develop thesis statements, conclusions, all that stuff. It's not that bad, but it is a little dry sometimes. And what I really like to teach, and one of the reasons why I miss teaching high school so much, is I do miss teaching literature. You know, reading short stories with students and all that. And this class at the community college was supposed to be that. I was supposed to read a bunch of, had like a whole syllabus, planned and prepped, and was ready to do that with them. And Yeah, there were only like, before I left for Christmas break, there were only like 9 students enrolled in the class. And so um, it's not worth it to the community college to have a class with only 9 students in it. So they cut me loose. And no reflection on me. I think it's just more of a reflection on like reading in general, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, the way community college works is that there's students who are essentially like on 3 tracks. You know, there's like track 1 is like students who are there to get like a 2-year associate's degree, and they all have to take like an English 101 class, which is composition, but they do not have to take a 102 class, which is literature. And then track 2 kids are like kids who are actually bound for university, so like a 4-year college. So they're there to like get their grades up and all that. And they do have to take like a 102 class, like the literature class that I was supposed to teach. But because there's so few students this year at the community college that are heading to a 4-year university, there just were not enough students to justify me teaching them. So they took my students, I guess, and they gave them to like a full-time professor there. So, which I understand, that's the name of the game, right? Did I say there were 3 tracks? I can't remember what the 3rd track is. Maybe there's only 2. I don't know. But yeah, after 1 semester of being a part-time adjunct English instructor at 2 colleges, I'm learning that the roller coaster of this particular job is very much just that. It's a roller coaster. You never really know how many classes you're going to be teaching every semester until you actually are in the classroom teaching them. You know, like I was absolutely certain that I was going to be reporting to the community college on Monday to teach this class, and then I just suddenly, you know, got an email saying like, sorry, no dice, right? And meanwhile, at the other college where I teach, the college that I just got my master's from, the university, they took away a class from me back in early December. I was prepared to teach 3 classes for them, and they took 1 class away due to under-enrollment. And then suddenly, like a couple days ago, I got an email saying, like, it's back on. Like, we need you to teach this other class. So I would like to say that it evened out, that I'm like even Steven, but not really, because I was planning on this semester being just like, you know, last semester, which is having, 2 classes at the community college and then 3 classes at the university. And now it's 3 classes at the university, plus like a lab, and then no classes at the community college. So, yeah, it did not even out at all, but, you know. So, you know, I hate it because it's just such an unstable way to make a living. And I called my wife and I told her, and you know, we'll make it through, but I do need to start looking for something that's more stable. You know, and what are the options right now? Like the options, you know, so just kind of running back through a very brief history of what's happened here, is that I have my master's in education. I got that in 2013. After I got that master's, I became the education director for a park for a couple of years. I was planning field trips and writing grants and doing very well in that job. And then I ended up meeting the principal for a school on one of those trips, and she offered me a job teaching English at a private high school. So I did that for 5 years, and I enjoyed it. Although, like, really what I discovered during that time teaching is that I really had a knack for interpreting and writing about literature, and I had always known that, but I decided to go back to school to to earn my master's in English language arts, not English, like English literature, right? I forgot for a second what I earned my master's in. So I enrolled in grad school, and while I was teaching, began grad school to go for a second master's in English literature, and realized that if I continued to only take one class of my master's degree and teach every semester, it would take me something like 8 years to earn a master's. So I decided to, I got an appointment at the university to where I could, take classes full time, and get all those classes paid for. And all I had to do in return was teach some classes, which was great because, I liked teaching high school, but I really wanted to teach college. And so, I left my high school teaching job after 5 years and went in and got my master's in English literature. And now I got that back in the spring. And now I'm, teaching at that university as well as adjuncting, as I said, at like the community college when they need me. And so, yeah, that's just kind of where I am right now. I guess you could say I'm like in between jobs, but I'm also kind of doing what I wanted to do all along. I'm just really enjoying teaching college right now. There are a lot of benefits to it. I mean, I guess like the typical benefits, like, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and all that stuff, like a 401k, you don't really get those as an adjunct instructor. So I have to make up for those on my own, right? Thanks, Obama. But I do enjoy teaching college so much more than I did teaching high school. There are just a lot of benefits to it. You're not spending every single waking hour of your weekends preparing lessons and grading. That's one thing. The other thing is also that you don't have to deal with the constant judgment of parents, that just parents are coming in saying that you're not, treating their kids right, you're not teaching them good. They say that, you're not teaching my kid good, right? I like that a lot. And I also just generally like the idea that I am teaching older students who can easily be blamed for their lack of engagement, right? Like when you teach high school, it's like you who are constantly getting blamed as the teacher. And, like last fall, I had a couple of students who failed my class and literally could not be blamed for it. It was their fault. They did not come to class. They slept in, they did not do the work. And nobody came to me pressuring me to, give them passing grades, which very often happened and does happen in high schools across this country. Right? It's a major problem in education right now, and I don't have to worry about it as a college teacher. I do have to worry about the fallout of it. A lot of kids, when they get to college, are used to being passed no matter what kind of a job they do. I did have a student last semester who routinely did not do any work for me at all, and when I finally informed her, 2/3 of the way into the semester, right before the drop date, she could withdraw from my class by getting a W instead of an F. She'd still have to pay all the tuition and, incur that penalty, but she wouldn't get an F in the class. And so I felt it incumbent upon me as her teacher to tell her, you are not going to pass my class. You should probably withdraw so that you don't get an F and you can take it again next semester and get a fresh start. And, she told me, oh no, I'm going to pass this class. And I said, well, I think that's great. You've got to start doing work in it. And she's like, oh yeah, this is how it always worked in high school. I wouldn't do my work until somebody, a teacher told me I was about to fail, and then I would start doing all the work. So, and yeah, that's one of the things that you do have to deal with as a college instructor is, you have these kids who have just been passed through the system, given passing grades regardless of the kind of work that they did, if they did any at all. And now they're in college and they're surprised that, they're they're not going to pass no matter what they do. It's because, there are just all these incentives for a teacher to pass a student in high school, right? There are the administrative incentives. Like the administrator comes to you and says, like, this kid has to pass, right? Our district gets more money if we pass students as opposed to failing them, right? So that happens sometimes. Grades get changed from like D's to C's because of that, because the district gets more money if kids get C's instead of D's, right? There's the parent incentive, right? The teacher does not want to go home at night and spend 2 hours on the phone with a parent. So that they can avoid that, they give the kid a B instead of a C, right? That happens in high school. And so these kids are so surprised when they get to college and they find out that the teacher has no incentive or no pressure whatsoever to pass them from anybody. The teacher just can fail them. And they will nobody will ever care about it. The administrator, the parents may care about it, but the parents can't contact the instructor. It's against the law, right? So it's just, these things you do have to deal with teaching college. But again, the good thing about it is that it's really nothing that you have to, lose sleep over. So, I do like that. I think that like teaching college is like just teaching distilled to its purest form. What you do is you plan your lessons, you go in and you teach them, you grade your students' papers, and then that's kind of it. And there's nothing like at the secondary level or the elementary level where it's about so much more than that. It's like 70% administration, 30% teaching, right? So in that, administration is obviously, incurs a whole lot, like discipline's one of those things, and I hate disciplining. I really hate disciplining students. I don't like it at all. It was something that in high school I was really kind of forbidden from doing, but the kids would still get like, disciplined in other ways too. You just couldn't call it that. But it's one of those things that in college you don't discipline students, right? I mean, if you could call it discipline, you just, you give them bad grades, right? And so I think that's it. So I will continue to teach whilst looking for like a stable job. I don't know. Of course, the other route is to continue to go to school, and I have thought about this quite a lot, to go and get my PhD. I came very close back in early December to submitting a PhD application to the University of Alabama, which is where I got my bachelor's degree in 2006. And yeah, going back to Tuscaloosa and getting my PhD in English literature. I decided not to do that, though, because I would have to spend, that would mean, if I got in, it would mean that I would have to spend the next 4 to 5 years commuting down to Tuscaloosa, which isn't like the worst drive on the planet, but if I were to do it like 3 to 5 days a week, it would take quite a toll on my car. It'd be a very big, especially because I would, as a PhD student, I would be not making a great stipend, not a lot of money. Yeah, it would be a heavy expense. So I talked to my wife, and I talked to Jessica, and if I do get into a PhD program, it would be someplace where we would have to live. And unfortunately, the university where I just graduated, they don't offer a PhD in English literature, only a master's. So I've been thinking about possibly going to Knoxville to the University of Tennessee. I was like, we can maybe live there. Maybe. But I was thinking that, PhD applications are due in December. every year. And so I was thinking that maybe I just spend like another year, studying, researching, hopefully maybe writing, and just getting myself ready, right, for a PhD program. And then I apply in December, perhaps hopefully maybe get in, and then the following fall enroll, which would mean that we would move, right? And when they start accepting applications, which is like in March, that's when our lease is up. So we would give up our lease. We would move. I don't know. A lot of things. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is it's like the new year. It's the second day. I guess now it's the third day of January 3rd, which is like the day my car payment is due. That's how I associate days now of the month. It's like, what day is my car payment due? What day is rent due? What day is health insurance due? Right. I stack them all at the beginning of the month too, so I can just get them all out of the way. It's like my paycheck comes in, and then by like the 5th of the month, I have like a little bit left over to like go buy groceries. So, right. I got so frustrated tonight when I got that email that my class had been canceled, and my poor nephew was just sitting there, and I said something that maybe wasn't like very constructive for like a 10-year-old to hear. I just told him, like, Wyatt, when you grow up, just everybody wants to take things from you. I said, you get a paycheck and just like, it's gone instantly. I don't even know why. It's basically like you are the middleman between your employer and all of your creditors. Right? I don't even know why they give it to you. You should just set up I don't know. It's almost like just a hassle just to go on and pay bills, right? I guess that's why we have auto pay. So that we don't even have to think about it anymore. We just remove ourselves from the equation. We set up the freaking auto pay. We don't check our bank account and just we don't even have to worry about it. About being the middleman, right? So I don't think he liked that very much, but maybe it's something he needed to hear. I don't know. Maybe I'm probably going to get like a phone call from his parents in a couple of days. It'd be like having nightmares about like Chase Manhattan Bank. Is it still Chase Manhattan? I don't think it is. I think it's just Chase Bank. I don't know why I called it Chase Manhattan. So. But yeah, I feel like, again, this is the beginning of 2025. It's a big year, I feel like. I think I have this feeling that some changes are going to happen this year. There's going to be some kind of like a new job, I feel like. I don't know, maybe not this year, but next year is going to be a big year. So maybe this year will be kind of a year of, perhaps getting ready for transitions. The next year, I don't know. And of course, I have anxiety about all of it because I am like, I'm going to be, this time next year, I'm going to be sitting out here. I'm going to be 43 years old. I guess you knock on wood for that. I don't know. I'm not very superstitious, but why take chances? 43 years old, and yeah, I have anxiety about that because like when you're 42, 43 years old, you need things to happen like immediately, right? If you feel like, major life events are right around the corner, you really need to speed up your pace so you can get there quicker. Because you're not getting any younger. And these are years where you really have to try super hard not to compare yourself to other people your age. Because yeah, you do see other people your age and you do see where they are. And you're like, I should be there. But maybe, I don't know, they're thinking the same thing about you. Well, they're probably thinking like, glad, thank God I'm not there. I don't know. But I was talking to my wife the other night, and I was thinking that, kind of looking around, it's like, yeah, we don't own a house. We rent. Okay, fine. We don't have a lot of wealth. Okay, fine. That is kind of the thing that we've traded up for being able to do the things that we kind of want to do, I suppose, in life. I think that that's what we all do, right? Is we do have to just take a pause, kind of take stock, look around, and be like, this is not that bad for the decisions that I made. I've never met anybody who's like just truly unhappy, that just really does feel like every decision they've ever made has been wrong, right? Like, I don't think that, I don't know. I think that I have been with my life like very instinctual. Like I've followed instincts, I suppose, and maybe that hasn't given me everything that I've needed, but I've kind of gotten what I wanted, I suppose. I don't know. So, resolutions for this new year. Would like to do some more podcasts, obviously. I was kind of looking back on my podcast catalog recently and thinking that this is, I suppose, other than my relationship with my wife, which I started the year that I started my podcast, this has been the longest lasting relationship of my life, right? It's just my relationship with doing a podcast. And yes, there have been very long times where I've been away from it. The era from 2017 to 2020. Like, I stopped doing podcasts regularly when I started teaching high school. So as I said, when you teach, you spend like every waking moment that you're not doing anything else, working on being a teacher. But then again, in 2020, when COVID happened, I was in my studio at home. I was in my home office, and I had my mixer there, my microphone right in front of me, and I was teaching virtual school. And so, yeah, that's when I started podcasting again. And have been doing it, fairly infrequently ever since. But nevertheless, I've been thinking about the podcast in terms of like seasons. Like, I may not do them every, week or every month or whatever, but I do at least a pretty good series of shows every year. Like in 2023 or 2024, right, that we just came out of. I did, a whole summer's worth full of shows. I did my first show, I think the night before I graduated from graduate school. And then my last show was right before I started teaching, like a couple of nights before my first day back teaching. So yeah, I would like to do some more podcast. I would like to get some more stuff published to my Substack, Mike's Bonfire, right? .substack.com. Is that the name of the thing? See, I haven't been on there in so long, I can't remember. But I was like so active there back in the summer. And so I'd like to get some more stuff published on there. And, yeah. Tonight, hold on, let me start a video here. So I've been kind of like videoing myself tonight. I've been kind of videoing myself tonight as I've been at my folks' house. Just alone here. And I took a long walk through the woods a little earlier, and just filmed all that. Kind of just been doing like some behind the scenes of this like here podcast, and making home movies. I don't know. And I'll post those on the Substack, and if you want to see them. So, yeah, just some video stuff to go along with the podcast, And yeah, I'd like to do some more of that. going forward. Just, because I often think about just whenever I'm driving around and walking around, like a lot of the stuff that I just kind of want to videotape, and I guess I want to use my phone and just edit it together and just put it up for viewing. So, because I see that now. It's like one of my morning rituals on days when I have to get up and go do things is I'll wake up, I'll have like a cup of coffee, and I'll sit down and I'll watch YouTube. And one of the things that I notice on YouTube a lot is that everybody kind of follows a very, distinct kind of formula. And it's a good formula, but, a lot of it's just people sitting in like, their little rooms with like their cool little YouTube subscriber play button behind them. And, they talk about very specific things to them. And I think that's okay, but I also really like videos where people are just like driving around and, I don't know, drinking coffee and just having little mini adventures with their days, which is something that I've done on this podcast frequently throughout the years. But I just like to do more of it, So this plan is not very fleshed out right now. I realize that, but you have to remember I haven't done a show in many months, so I'm getting back into it. Sitting out here. Okay, it's the next day now, and good morning. I guess actually it's the same day because I finished recording last night about 30 minutes after midnight. So today is January 3rd, 2025, car payment day, right? So now I have the house to myself, the whole house this time, not just the downstairs. Everybody's left. My parents piled the kids back in the car to go back to Mississippi to start school again on Monday. So, and I was intending to finish last night's episode. Well, last night, but I just decided to keep going a little bit longer. So I guess I have more things to talk about. I'm looking at the backyard of my parents' house out here in Gentle Forest, this small little neighborhood out here in Shelby County, Alabama. And it used to be like we used to look back and there would be like so many woods back here, so many trees, but all those trees have been cleared out a lot of those trees have been cleared out over the years because of various tornadoes, lightning strikes, and also development, both from my dad as well as some of the neighbors whose property butts up against their property. There's still like a lot of trees here. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily a forest, but it is very gentle, right? So, out back here, my dad has set up a couple of outhouses over the years. Not like outhouses like in the old Western days where you go like to the bathroom or whatever. I don't know. My dad is old enough to remember when he did actually used to have to put on his bathrobe and slippers to go to the bathroom, but not necessarily slippers, but shoes. But what I mean is like, just like houses that kind of surround, like tiny houses that surround the house, the main house, right? There's a storage shed out there that he got about maybe 10 or 12 years ago or so, to just house all the various like Christmas decorations. And my mom still has like a bunch of our toys from when we were kids, my sisters and I. Um, and recently, a recent addition is a greenhouse over here in the side yard that my dad got my mom as a Christmas present. My mom's like got a big green thumb. So there's a greenhouse over there. Yeah, last night I took a walk just around their property. And I had this high-powered flashlight that my dad gave me just to like walk around the house. And it was so bright the thing was basically like day wherever you shone it. So yeah, I took a walk with the flashlight, and I took video of that entire walk, and I'm posting that. I'm deciding that I'm doing like a little behind the scenes, I suppose, of this episode when it eventually does get posted. There's a lot of footage that I'm filming in and around me recording, and so I'll probably post that as maybe like a bonus feature to this episode or whatever, if you actually want to see some of the things I'm talking about. So yeah, there's a greenhouse out there, and last night I was taking a walk, and just like with, the cold night with just a steady breeze blowing through the air with all the like leaves crunching under my shoes as I was walking out there, it was a really creepy effect, especially when that flashlight hit the greenhouse. It was like remember that game, The Slender Man? The Slender Man that was like so big with the kids like 12, 13 years ago. Was that a creepypasta, right? Where people would, somebody created like this Slender Man Photoshop image, and it circulated and went viral on the internet. And before you know it, people were like creating this entire lore around it. There was a video game, there was a movie. And then I think these two girls stabbed, almost fatally, a friend of theirs, because they said that the Slender Man told them to. So one of those instances you can point to in the last 15 years where you're just like, the kids are not all right. There's something wrong with them, right? Every generation we kind of have something like that. In the 1980s, during like the Satanic Panic, there was something similar in West Memphis, like in Arkansas, where these kids were fatally killed near their house, and they blamed it on these like local youths who were into like Satanism and the occult, and I'm assuming probably Dungeons and Dragons, and the West Memphis 3, I think it was. But anyway, it wasn't like the Slender Man. Like, the kids did not do it. They were tried and found guilty, and I think at least one of them was sentenced to death row. But I think it was proven that they did not do it. I think it's like one of their parents was responsible, right? I don't know. There's a whole series of documentaries on that West Memphis 3. It's called the Paradise Lost series. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I think it was like one of the parents was responsible. It was like really crazy. So, so that was different. There's something, I don't know. I'm sure it does happen about every 20 years or so. Like just, maybe even, more often than that. Just kids go nuts, and they're influenced by something that they see on television or something that they read on the internet, a video game they play, and they go crazy. But I think there's often extenuating circumstances of some kind. Something that, with Columbine, for instance, right? I am forgetting. I'm leaving out all these school shootings, right? Because, with like Columbine, for instance, they pointed to Eric and Dylan and the video games they played, like Doom and things like that. But, I mean, there's never been any causal link to any of that stuff, right? The weird thing about the Slender Man thing is that there is a direct causal link to these kids, these two teenage girls, being like obsessed with the Slender Man, and that was their excuse. The Slender Man told us to. Maybe I'm forgetting some other instances where kids have, who have committed horrible acts of crimes, have directly, who have blamed, video games or some kind of pop culture for their wrongdoings, for their transgressions. I don't know. Just remind me about it. So anyway. Yeah, but now I'm here. What is it? It's 11:49, and I'm taking the opportunity to just while I have the parents' house to myself to finish up my lesson plans. And also do some laundry. I'm doing some laundry at their house. It's kind of ironic to me. It hasn't escaped me the irony that when I was a college student, I never did laundry at my parents' house. I had like my own apartment, and I would go and do laundry there. But now that I'm teaching college, I come to my parents' house occasionally to do laundry. Right? It's just because like my wife and I for years we've lived in a building where we have a communal laundry room. And you do have to like, I mean, kind of like the outhouses of old. You have to like put on your shoes and something warm this time of year to go out there and turn the laundry over. And there's always the threat that somebody's going to get there before you, and they're going to like take your laundry and just like your wet clothes and just put it on top of the unit so they can use it. So it's just an issue that we've had to deal with for years. So when I can, I do like to come and use somebody else's laundry machine, right? I don't know. I know it sounds like a massive inconvenience to those of you who have washer dryers. We've found a way to live with it over the years. I don't know. I mean, you could just any inconvenience on this planet. I think you do it long enough, you deal with it long enough, you just find a way to deal with it. So anyway. So yeah, I am getting pretty close to finishing up my syllabi for the year, like plural. I had to do, what they call a class is they call it a prep. Each individual class you teach, I guess, each individual subject that you teach carries with it its own set of lesson plans and a syllabus, and we call that a prep. So I have. At the university, I have 3 preps this year. I was supposed to have 4, but as I said, the community college gig fell through. So, again, on the bright side, looking on the bright side, it's less work that I have to do. It's less money, but it is less work. So, but yeah, at the university, I have 3 preps. 4 classes and 3 preps. So, like, well, I guess that's technically 4 preps, yeah. No, it is 3. So I'm teaching 2 sections of the same class of an English composition class, where I teach the kids how to write essays and, as I said, thesis statements and conclusions and all that stuff, and do research. And then I'm teaching a 102 class, which is more heavily involved in, like research, and like the students have to find some kind of a problem with the university campus, some issue that the students are dealing with. And like one issue I've had before is that, the laundry rooms are a disaster. For instance, the communal laundry rooms, some students just leave their clothes in there overnight, voiding the machine's use for other students and all that stuff. So they have to find an issue on campus, and then they have to do a bunch of research so that they can propose an adequate solution of some kind. So this is like an entire semester-long project. And some of the students, the issue is that the students can get very bored, because if they have to pick one topic, one issue at the very beginning of the semester, and they have to carry through that issue through the entire semester. So if they pick a bad one, which again is on them, not necessarily me, although I really try to guide them through the process of picking something that they're going to have a lot to talk about and a lot to research. But if they do pick a bad one, then they're stuck with it for the entire semester. And so yeah, a lot of the heavy lifting is there at the beginning of the semester. So I have to kind of make sure I work with the students so that they can pick a big problem, right? And yeah, it is an issue. Like I didn't really have so much of a problem creating my English composition 1 class, the essay writing class, because I've taught that one now 3 times, and so I've got like a pretty good stable of like lesson plans and curricula that I can deploy to the students. But with the 102 class, I've only taught that class once, and the last time there were a lot of issues that came up throughout the semester that I'm trying to address now. and just make it like a better deal for the students, right? I think one of the things that I'm doing this time around is I'm allowing the students to identify not so much like just not only concrete problems, right? Like in the past, I've had them identify like issues with school lunches and issues with like, lack of places to eat on campus, and these actual issues that you can look at and you can identify as problems and in infrastructure, right? I think this time around I'm going to allow the students to look at more abstract issues, like issues with, the hot button issue amongst students these days is mental health, right? What is causing students lack of mental health? Is it, social media? Is it living in like like an urban campus that has very little transportation, that has nowhere, it's very difficult to get around the city and do things, right? I guess that's more of a concrete issue, but it can also affect students' depression and things like that. So I'm allowing the students to look more at that as well. Issues in education, like the students are always interested in telling the teachers how terrible education is in this country. And so, one of the first conversations I'm going to have with the students is this. I'm going to give them this article to read that I saw recently. It was like an opinion article in the New York Times about how like 49% of Gen Zers, which, believe it or not, I'm teaching Gen Z, these are kids who were born, around 2006, 2007, right? So this is like the first group of kids to grow up fully immersed in like the iPhone and the smartphone and all that, right? Devices all around them. But yeah, 49% of Gen Zers say that they lack agency in education, that they grow up and most teachers just tell them what to do rather than involving them in their own kind of educational, path and all that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because, in the past, the word agency has not really been used by young children, but now it's like something just like mental health, like this language of adults. That's this language that's in the past traditionally been like the domain of adults diagnosing kids. Now the kids are kind of using this language to diagnose themselves. And so, I think that's an interesting, it presents an interesting thing. Like, I think one thing is that, and I've seen it myself, is that like kids, when they are empowered to use the term mental health, they are empowered to overuse it and misuse it as well. If a kid says that like my mental health is just not where it should be, then they can use that with an adult to make an excuse for like why they couldn't do homework, right? For instance. Okay. So, I think it is interesting because like for the first time in I think in a long time, maybe ever, adults and, children are kind of on the same page in terms of like using similar language, and therefore like a conversation perhaps could be had. I don't know, but at the same time, kids have also always been empowered to have their own language that parents cannot understand, right? Like as Will Smith once said, right? For instance, if I have gone in the past and told a student that they're not doing something right, or they're spending too much time doing this when they should be doing that, they'll usually respond to me like, "Okay, boomer." Okay, and I've talked about this in recent years. So I'll say, "Okay, boomer," and then when you say, "I'm not really a boomer. I'm actually a millennial. I'm only like 1 or 2 generations behind you," they'll be like, "Whatever, boomer." Like it doesn't mean the same thing to them that it does to us. And this is just, the tip of the iceberg with a lot of language that kids appropriate that adults, there's no entry point for adults, right? Like adults, if a kid just uses the word skibbity, there's no entry point there for an adult. An adult has no path forward into that conversation. It's literally like a roadblock that a kid puts up saying like, I have no interest in what you say to me right now, right? So... and yeah, I mean, kids have always done that. Obviously, they've always had language and created language of their own, right? That whole joke in that movie Mean Girls where that girl says like fetch right? It's just a completely uh, it's a completely made up vocabulary term. However, it is a real term, right? Like fetch. I mean, it's a real word. I mean, she's just changing the meaning. So in that sense, adults still have somewhat of of an entry point into that conversation because they hear the word fetch and they recognize it as an actual word. Skibbity is not an actual word, and so therefore the kid has to tell you the word, and then they have to define it for you. But they're not interested in defining it for you. You have to like go do your own research as an adult to find out what skibbity means, and then you kind of find out that it doesn't mean anything. It's just literally just it's a sound. It's a nonsense collection of like phonemes, right? Deliberately designed to confuse you as an adult and to keep you away from having a meaningful dialogue with that child. And so, anyway. Yeah, so going back to my EH 102 English Composition 2, so they have to, identify some kind of an issue, some kind of a problem that the students on the university campus are dealing with, and they have to go and first create a proposal where they have to actually identify that this is a real issue that needs to be dealt with. They have to find a little bit of research that supports them, that shows that this is a real issue that's being addressed. And after that, they have to do the like a problem analysis where they have to go much deeper into it, and eventually they get around to creating a solution for it. And the issue that I had the first time I taught this class, which I'm trying to figure out, is very difficult creating a syllabus because you have to figure out what you're doing the entire semester and really get as close. Like, you may have to change the syllabus up. Like, you will definitely change the syllabus up as the semester advances because you find out the students are capable or incapable of certain things. You have to, change some things around, but you really do want to get like as close to an accurate approximation as possible to make that syllabus for that syllabus. So one thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the students away from creating solutions outright. Like, they see something, they see a problem, and they just immediately fix it right then and there. And understanding and making them understand that you can't just see a problem and just immediately, post a solution. You can theorize one, but you have to test it, right? And so that's the whole process. Like, the whole class is, it's not the class is not my idea. It's a class that the university, does require. And I do have a certain level of freedom in designing it. But mainly it's just to get the students to, go into a workforce that is heavily bent on, problem and project solutions and logistics and all that stuff. And it's difficult for me because this is not really my area. Like, I did work, as the education director for a park for a while. So I was heavily involved in using data and using research and putting all that into grant writing, into grants that I would then get money for, and we would implement, the solutions that we propose. So I have been a part of that world before, and I did do it to a lesser degree when I was teaching high school. But, generally I'm preparing students who are going into things like civil engineering and nurse practitioner, right? And all these jobs that I have, all these career paths that I have no knowledge of whatsoever. And so, that's one of the things I'm trying to get the students to do, is to use the class as a way to find out, to look at something that's kind of aligns with their field and their interest and what they want to do. Because a lot of these students, they're in their second year of their freshman year of college, their second semester, or they're sophomores in college, or maybe even a little bit more. And I'm trying to get these students to use the class to look more into what they want to do and then come to me and say like, here's how my solution, like I figured out the solution by looking more into what I want to do for a living, right? If that makes any sense. And yeah, another issue that I often had when I taught this class last spring was every student's solution to something was just to create an app, right? It's like there's never like a clear way, like the laundry machine problem, the laundry infrastructure is broken. Oh, just create an app for it, right? I'm trying to get them away from that because I've got so many apps on my phone. I'm just exhausted with all of them. And I download an app and I completely forget that it exists on my phone. So, I'm trying to get them away from doing that. Just create an app. That's too easy, right? So I don't want to see any more of that. Yeah, last night I was talking a little bit about possibly going into like a PhD program for English literature. And, again, that is something that weighs heavily on my mind this year, especially since the applications are due in December. And so far, I've only really thought about the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. That seems to me like the most obvious place. I don't know if I'm going to get in. It's a fairly well-known and fairly prestigious English literature program, specifically because you want to go there if you are interested in studying the works of the author Cormac McCarthy, who died 2 summers ago, in June of 2023. And Cormac McCarthy, of course, is like most famous among people, I think, for No Country for Old Men. He wrote the novel that got turned into that movie that won all those Oscars. And also The Road, a novel he wrote in 2007 that won the Pulitzer Prize that same year. And I did my master's thesis on Cormac McCarthy on a book he wrote in 1979 called Suttree that was set in Knoxville, Tennessee, just like a lot of his early books are set in and around Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where he lived. He was a student at the University of Tennessee before he left to join the military. And he was stationed in Alaska where he read. He basically just did nothing in Alaska but read books. And when he came out of the military, he went back to Knoxville and just spent the next 20 years or so writing. Most of that time he spent writing the novel that I wrote about called Suttree. And so I am very fascinated by Cormac McCarthy just because he is a writer that just has such a specific kind of style, and also just writes about stuff I'm really fascinated by, right? Suttree is just a wonderful, beautiful novel that's, set in a, just dirty, polluted southern town right after just this big sweep of industrialism came through following the arrival of the Tennessee Valley Authority in the 1930s. And I am just fascinated as somebody who grew up in the South, who has grown up reading a lot of Southern literature. I'm fascinated by how Southern lit, especially after the Depression, tackles the issue of preserving just this certain Southern culture and heritage in the wake of industrialization, in the wake of, the way Northern industrialists homogenized the South to be like the rest of the country. And in that, you just lost a lot of culture and tradition. And obviously, a lot of people did not mourn that loss because, of course, a lot of it is caught up in racism, right? And classism and just all of the terrible isms you can think of were lost. But again, a lot of what happens is a lot of that racism and classism didn't really get lost. It just got rolled up into other things, and it became what we might call like the angry Southern male. The reason that you see so many people, here in the South, driving trucks in the middle of the city that aren't full of anything, right? They drive with these gigantic, these gas guzzling Chevy Silverados with completely empty beds, right? Just these people who buy trucks and hate intellectuals and voted for Donald Trump, and who are not really rural, and they're not really, they're not really country, but they kind of play like they are. They like cosplay, right? And I think in a lot of ways, like the novels of Cormac McCarthy kind of do a lot to explain how we got from point A to point B here in the South, as well as in the West as well. And again, and the major thing about a lot of Cormac McCarthy's novels is that they do take place in these formerly like agricultural places that have given way over to industrialization. So in a lot of ways, he kind of picks up where like somebody like William Faulkner leaves off, for instance, right? And so that's why I just find the novels of McCarthy fascinating, and I am right now like working my way through his entire catalog of books. So for the first 20 years of his career, as I said, he was out in the he was in the South, and he was heavily identified as a Southern writer. And then in the early 80s, he moves out west, and he starts writing Western novels and kind of writing revisionist Western novels, kind of like in the same way that Sam Peckinpah, the film director, would do like revisionist Western films. So Cormac McCarthy became very famous for he was like completely unknown, like so much so that in 1979 his last Tennessee novel Suttree was published, and they only ran 3,000 copies before they shut the printing down. And so he was very, very unknown. And in 1985, he publishes Blood Meridian, his first Western novel. And it gets a lot of attention, and I believe it wins. No, it wins some prizes, but yeah, like, and brings him a little bit of attention. But then in 1992, he publishes All the Pretty Horses and wins the National Book Award for that, and begins to become like a major celebrated author, to the point where there are like tons of academic articles that are being written by him. He's interviewed eventually by like Oprah Winfrey, which is, like a major marker of success, I suppose, for any writer, even though he's kind of reluctant to do the interview. I think he did it as a favor. And so, yeah, of course, in 2007, I find out about him the way a lot of people find out about him, like simultaneously his most celebrated novel, The Road, comes out, which I still haven't read. I'm getting to it. And No Country for Old Men, the film, comes out, and as I said, like, is a huge box office success and wins all these Academy Awards, and is a movie that I actually just got for Christmas. My wife got me that movie for Christmas, so it came out on like a special edition Criterion Blu-ray. So I was really happy to get that. So I found that movie. I saw it on opening night when it came out in 2007, and did not know then what I know now, which is that is probably the best movie of the last 25 years, in my opinion. Not very humble opinion. I think it's like a very boastful opinion. That is my favorite movie of the last 25 years. That movie is just so wonderful. It's just so, it's a great horror movie, I don't know. So that's how I found out about Cormac McCarthy, and of course I read the book and just really got into him from there, and eventually worked my way around to Suttree, and decided that's what I wanted to spend a year of my life writing about, right? So now that I'm done with that master's thesis, and I'm making my way through all of Cormac McCarthy's novels, and I'm up to the second novel of his so-called Border trilogy, a book he wrote in 1994 that came out right after All the Pretty Horses. It's a book called The Crossing. And so, again, it's set in the 1930s, and it is about this sort of Western frontier that's disappearing, and which... by now there's been so many revisionist Westerns, and I know that's kind of a trope. But But that also brings me to why, like, I do want to get my PhD, and why I do see, like, a lot of value in the interpretation of literature, because I do find, just like all art, we all, watch movies and we read books and we play video games, and it's all art. And the reason that we just are so consumed by it is because it just helps us understand our lives a little bit better in the world that we live in, regardless, a lot of times, of when it was written, right? Something doesn't need to be, published currently for us to understand the world that we're currently living in. And those are some of my favorite reading experiences, like when I read, I don't know, something like The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. It's a, book that takes place in the Gilded Age in New York, and you just kind of take what's going on in that book, and just like this kind of major class consciousness, these conflicts between class that are going on in that book. And you just see that, in over 100 years, nothing's really changed in our society. And I think that it is really a lot of fun to read works of literature, regardless of when they were written, and just apply them to our modern day lives to sort of create theories for why things are the way that they are. So, yeah, I think that that's just one of the reasons why I do want to continue, perhaps to get a PhD. Like right now, I can easily, I think I can stop, right? I can stop at my master's degree, and I can continue to teach and be an educator. And yeah, I can perhaps like write articles and continue to like interpret literature, but the education that I have right now will not allow me to be able to be like a tenured professor someday, which is what I want to be. Like, teach at a college, be tenured, teach classes in literature. And, yeah, I think that is like my ultimate career goal. And the biggest regret I have is that it took me until my mid-30s to really figure that out. And, right. And there's like this curse and this privilege of being young, that you have the opportunity to figure out what you want to do with your life, and set about a path to get that thing, right? That's a privilege, but it's also a curse, because a lot of people end up locking themselves into that thing and just being in that thing forever. And for me, for instance, I had this idea of what I wanted to do when I was 18 or 19 years old, and I kind of locked myself into that path. And by the time I graduated college, when I was like 22 years old, I figured that that's not what I wanted to do. So it took me a while. It took me until I was about 25 to figure out that I wanted to be an educator. And then it took me until I was about 35 to figure out that I wanted to not only educate, but I also wanted to research. I also wanted to, come up with some ideas of my own. And, I don't know, get a seat at the table and talk with other people about what they think about Cormac McCarthy, I suppose. And yeah, there's a huge gateway to entry on that. There should be. Of course, anybody, it's very democratized. Anybody can sit down, anybody can read a book, anybody can talk about that book, of course, right? And I suppose that's something that I should consider. Like, why do I need a PhD to read books and write about them? There's a lot of people who do that, I suppose. So that is one thing that I need to think about this year. But again, in terms of like just getting a stable job and settling down, I don't think that I would be, comfortable with that right now. Like, I could go back and easily teach high school, I suppose, and settle down into like a state, pension plan, and get a salary that would allow me and my wife to live fairly comfortable within our means, I suppose. Although I don't know. The weird thing is, like, right now, teaching a few classes at UAB, I'm kind of making the same amount of money I was as a teacher. So teaching high school. So and I'm doing less work, I guess, right? But it's also not very stable. So I don't know. There's a lot to think about. I don't have to solve it all today, sitting on the porch doing my laundry at my parents' house. All right. Thank you again so much for joining me here today and last night on the Midnight Citizen Show. Again, I'm your host, Mike Booty, and I will be doing more shows here in the new year, as well as posting a behind-the-scenes video of everything that's going on, right? Of things I've talked about, including a nice little walk in the night, in the cold night, in the cold dark and in the cold night around my parents' house on January 2nd, 2025. Thank you again. Keep your eyes open.